Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Mystery School, our seventh Sunday Mystery School. I'm so glad that all of you are here. Hello to everyone on YouTube. I was watching the chat as we were getting started. It's just so lovely to see everyone gathered here. And hello to everyone in my Zoom room. I was having a enjoyable little conversation before going live here with the members of the mastermind in the Zoom room and just really enjoying each other in the little community that we are building together. We'll have a chance to hear more from them a little bit later in the stream. So our seventh mystery school, and I was reflecting this morning on what it means to nurture, what it means to nurture. In particular, I was thinking about what it is that Sunday Mystery School nurtures. Why do we come back? Why do we come to Sunday Mystery School? Why do we come to a gathering like this on Sunday and sit in a space with other like-minded individuals? And what is it that's happening here? What are we nurturing when we do something like this? And this is, I mean, a lot of you are with me live, and a lot of you are watching the recording. But either way, there's a bit of a routine here. There's a bit of a cycle or something cyclical that happens here. We keep coming back to this space. And I was just kind of sitting. I was like, why? What is it that this space has? And in particular, what is it that this space nurtures? And I was reflecting on some of the definitions or some of the dialogue that we've considered on this topic before, on this topic of what is this space nurture. And I was thinking about the language. When I first introduced the idea of mystery school, I talked about it being a language training, a way to build a shared lexicon, a shared, resource of words, of ideas, of stories, that really help us put words to our creative power in a way that allows us to build a shared context, a way for us to relate to each other. They say that, culture, the root of a culture is a shared language, and that culture is built on a shared language. And that shared language isn't just traditional in the sense of, English, Spanish, French, German. It's literally a way of talking about something, and how each, culture that each one of us is a part of has a language associated with it, that really sets it as a culture. And then people who understand the language have context and a way to relate to the shared culture. And I think that's part of it. But I think there's something else also that is nurtured in this space of Sunday Mystery School. And I think it's the same thing that Neville spent his entire, or rather invested, right? Because we understand there's a big difference between spending and invested. It's the same thing that Neville invested his entire life, really, about 40 years, invested in nurturing the same thing that this space, which explores his work, also nurtures. And I think it has a lot to do with our true identity. I think this space, really, the reason why we come back to Sunday Mystery School is because there's a nurturing that is happening, and we're nurturing our true identity. Each one of us in this world, this reality field in which we are living, each one of us is playing a part. Each one of us is a character. Each one of us has hopes, dreams, some sort of identity, in the fleshly sense, in the earthly sense. Each of us has an earthly identity. Each one of us has a story that we are living. And I think that what is being nurtured in a space like Sunday Mystery School is our connection to who we are that transcends the boundaries or the limitations, the perceived boundaries and perceived limitations of the story that we are living on this earth plane as individuals. I think there's something in this space that reminds us of our authorship. The fact that we are not just the character living the story, but there's also an aspect or a part of our being that is also the author, that is authoring the story that our character is living, that our character is experiencing. There is a part of ourselves that is creating in imagination what we then go on to live in this actual material cubic reality field in which we are dwelling. There's a part of us that is writing what becomes real, writing ahead of time what becomes real in terms of what is experiential, what becomes viscerally experienced, what becomes lived experience. When we are in the state of being the author, we are actually writing before we experience it. Now, each of us is doing this all of the time anyways. Every sentient being is imagining a reality field in which they are living. And I really think that the focus here, what we are nurturing, is a sense of agency, a sense of agency, a sense of being not just, writing for the sake of writing, but rather writing because we love to write, creating because we love to create, operating in this world because there's something about this world that we love. There's a reason why we have lives in this reality field. There's a reason why we've chosen to exist. And it's because we love it. There's something about this life that we love. There's something about this reality field that we exist in that we love. We love the individual, the plant in that reality field. This is a callback to last week's Sunday Mystery School. We were talking about living in a reality field. There's something about the very specific part of the reality field that we love. And there's also something very deeply that we love about living in a reality field that is growing unlimited possibilities, unlimited realities for us to choose from. There's something we love about being the author and having an unlimited palette that we can choose from to begin to write the story of our lives. And it is, of course, a tremendous opportunity, tremendous responsibility to be in that state of authorship. And I feel that really once a soul in an individual incarnation, like each of us are, arrives at the place where there is a desire to begin to enter the state of authorship, I believe that that's when, entering that place, I believe that's when it becomes important for us to really nurture that state. That's part of how we assume the state of being the author of our reality field, is by nurturing that state. And we nurture that state by nurturing our true identity, by reminding ourselves who we are and how our creative power is operated, what the principles are for operating our creative power, and reminding ourselves constantly that we always have the opportunity to make a new decision. We have always in front of us, at hand, the opportunity to choose a new reality. It's exactly what today's Sunday Mystery School is all about. We're going deeper into Neville's original Masterclass, where he really lays out the principles of how reality is created, this reality field that we're living in, and how to do it with agency. This is literally the part of our being that we are nurturing, and particularly that, in the tradition of Neville Goddard, that Neville nurtured originally, and we're following in this tradition, and we're going to nurture it, and we're going deeper into the stories this time. And, I was reading ahead in the text in preparation for this Sunday Mystery School. And in this one in particular, we're going to talk about what it means to leave an old reality field behind, to let it go, to surrender it, to allow it to pass away, that we may embody our authorship in the choosing of a new reality field to embody. This is a key aspect of what it means to be the author, because as long as we feel or perceive that we are stuck in a particular way of being, we are not operating with the agency of the author. It is fundamental to the state of being the author to have the opportunity to choose a different reality to give life to. This is literally what liberates our hearts and minds, the ability to choose. This is really the difference between, the reality field at the macrocosmic level, right? The reality field that contains all possibilities, which is also in this Neville tradition, the name of God, the Yod He Vav He, which is everything encompassed, and the name of the Son, the Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, which encompassed in that name is the ability to select and also to let go of and select anew. And that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to explore this in more detail. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it, because this is a little bit of a longer lesson, because we're really going to get into the story that is being told, the biblical story. Go to Deuteronomy today and look at a story about Moses and really uncover the truth of the authorship that is being nurtured in this story of Moses. But before we do that, I would like to take an opportunity to speak a blessing over everyone who is gathered here today, over everyone who is connected on the live stream, over all my channel members, everyone who is watching the recording, and also from a place of love and appreciation. This is a blessing that we are speaking over all sentient beings. So I invite you now just to join me and to draw our energy inward, speak a blessing, and then, understanding that our words have power, we will move into the lesson for today. I turn now to go within, drawing my senses inward into the center of my own being. I offer gratitude and appreciation in this moment for the perfection that is this present moment. In gratitude, we accept that we are, and we declare that we are wise souls, growing healthy, youthful minds. Thank you that we are feeling now the presence of life force energy, awakening, enlivening, and making whole our bodies in the physical dimension. Thank you that our relationships are now healed with love, compassion, and understanding. Thank you that we have humbly accepted our power and our responsibility to imagine wisely in the state of being the authors of the world we share. Thank you that we are inspired by life-expanding, consciousness-uplifting possibilities for our lives manifesting now. We honor the ancestors who have walked this path ahead of us. Each and every ancestor has contributed to where we are right now, and we are grateful. Thank you for the wisdom passed down from the ancients, encoded all around us in the spirit of liberating our hearts and our minds. Thank you that together we welcome the inheritance of our bright and beautiful future. And so it is. Okay. If you are following along with the text, there is a link in the video description to the text. It is not necessary. I will read the text to you. But if you find it helpful to follow along with a text as a focus tool, the link is there, and we are beginning. We are beginning at the bottom of page 8. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to start reading from the bottom of page 8. Neville says, the fourth story for tonight is taken from the last of the books attributed to Moses. If you need proof that Moses did not write it, read the story carefully. This story is found in the 34th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. If you ask any priest or rabbi, who is the author of this book, they will tell you that Moses wrote it. In the 34th chapter of Deuteronomy, you will read of a man writing his own obituary. It is Moses who wrote this chapter. A man may sit down and write what he would like to have placed upon his tombstone, an epitaph. But here we have a man who writes his own obituary. And then this man dies, and so completely rubs himself out that he defies posterity to find where he has buried himself. Here's the quote from Deuteronomy 34, 5, 6, and 7. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley, in the land of Moab, over against Beth Peor. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. And Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor was his natural force abated. Okay, so that's the text from Deuteronomy 34, 5, 6, and 7. And we have Moses, who is described as being the servant of the Lord, dying in the land of Moab. And he was buried in the valley in the land of Moab. And it says, no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. Now, sepulchre is a place where someone is buried. So no man knows where the grave is of Moses unto this day, according to this text in Deuteronomy. And it also says that Moses died at the age of 120 years old, but his eye was not dim and his natural force was not abated. Okay, meaning he was healthy and he was able to see, but he died at 120 years old. Now, we understand that the premise here is that these stories are not meant to be history. There was not a human person, such as you and I are, who lived and died in the land of Moab. Okay, this is not a literal story. This is an encoding of sacred wisdom that when we understand what the transmission is here, this sacred wisdom nurtures our authorship. Okay? So let's, using Neville's words, decode this sacred ancient wisdom woven into the fabric of this story. Neville says, you must, this night, not tomorrow, this night, now, learn the technique of writing your own obituary. Sounds like something an author would do. Write their own obituary, particularly of the character that you're living, right? Write the obituary of the character. Neville says you must learn the technique of doing this and so completely die to what you are that no man in this world can tell you where you buried the old man. If you are now ill and you become well, and I know you by reason of the fact that you are ill, where can you point and tell me that you buried the sick one? If you are impoverished and you borrow from every friend that you have, and then suddenly you roll in wealth, where did you bury the poor man? You so completely rub out poverty in your mind's eye that there is nothing in this world that you can point to and claim, that is where I left it. That is where I left the state of poverty. It doesn't operate that way. You so completely rub it out that it's gone, it vanishes, and you can't find the grave for it. Neville says, a complete transformation of consciousness rubs out all evidence of anything other than this ever existed in the world. So this is a technique for realizing are objective, as are most stories in the Bible, encodings or weavings of this sacred wisdom. Why? Because the ancients knew that the truth that sets us free, the truth that liberates our hearts and our minds, is the most important thing that could ever be passed down to posterity. If there's one thing that you would want to teach your children, it is how to set themselves free from any situation by assuming the state of authorship. You find your child in a state where they're not having a good time. Something is happening in life and they feel like they're, being taken for a ride and it's not enjoying it, right? What is the one thing that you can teach them that will set them free from imprisonment in that state? You can teach your child about authorship. You can teach their child that they have the ability to write their reality. Okay? Now, this is what the ancients have done. The ancients found it most important. Out of all the knowledge that they could pass down, they knew that this was the key. This was the most important thing for any human being to understand and to nurture. That state of authorship. And so they wove these ideas into stories that could be passed down, verbally at first and then eventually recorded, written down. And then they wrote them in a way where they would survive the eons, they would survive the ages, thousands of years. Okay? And now we have this gift from the ancients, this story that communicates exactly that, the state of authorship. And it's embodied in this tale about Moses writing his own obituary and then defying posterity to find where he buried the old man. Neville says the most beautiful technique for the realizing of man's objective is given in the first verse of the 34th chapter of Deuteronomy. And here is that verse. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead unto Dan. Okay, so you read that verse and you say, so what? Okay, well, right? Moses is going up to the top of the plains, looking at the mountain, looking over Jericho, the Lord showing him the land. Like, so what? What does this mean? Okay, well, here's where the wisdom is encoded. Neville says, if you take out a concordance and you look up these words, the first word, Moses, means to draw out, to rescue, to lift out, to fetch. In other words, Moses is a personification of the power in you and I, in us, that can draw out of us that which we seek. Moses is the state. Moses is the power within us that can draw out of us what we seek. Sounds like the author, does it not? Everything comes from within, Neville says, not from without. So anything that we desire, we must draw from within. Neville says you can draw from within yourself that which you now want to express as something objective to yourself. You draw it from the inner world to make it visible in the outer world. You are Moses, and you are coming out of the plains of Moab. What does the word Moab mean? Well, Neville says the word Moab is a contraction of two Hebraic words, mem and ab. Mem and ab means mother, mem, and ab, father. Mother, father, mem, ab. Your consciousness is the mother, father. There is no other cause in the world. Your I amness, your awareness is this Moab or mother, father. You are always drawing something out of it. Okay, so mother, father, the two components that are necessary to create life. Okay, your consciousness is both of those components together. Moab. Okay, so now we go back to that verse. Moses went up from the plains of Moab. So Moses, the state that draws out, is now coming up from the plains of the mother-father consciousness. Okay, now we're no longer talking about some guy, right, on some land somewhere looking at a mountain. Now we're starting to understand this is actually the dramatization of what is happening within ourselves when we enter the state of being the writers of our reality, the state of authorship. Neville says the next word is Nebo. Okay, so we're up from the plains of the mother-father state of consciousness unto the mountain of Nebo. In your concordance, Neville says, Nebo is defined as a prophecy. A prophecy is something subjective. If I say so-and-so or such and such will be, it is an image in the mind. It is not yet a fact. Okay, so it's a prophecy first. It's an image in the mind first. It's not a fact yet. So if you see it here in your mind's eye, but you don't yet see it in the outer world, what you see in your mind's eye could be considered a prophecy, or in this case, Nebo. We must wait, Neville says, and either prove or disprove this prophecy. Okay, so we have this idea in mind, which is our prophecy, and then when it shows itself in the objective world, that is proving the prophecy. In our language, Neville says, Nebo is your wish, your desire, right? Because they say, actually Neville has said many times, a desire is a prophecy when you understand the state of being the writer of your reality. When you do not understand the state of being the writer of your reality, desire can haunt your mind, meaning it can be something that you feel separated or limited from experiencing. But when you understand that you are the operant power and you understand that you have the ability to write the reality that you desire to experience, then that desire becomes a prophecy. Now note that in this story, we're going up from the plains of the mother-father state of consciousness unto the mountain of Nebo, okay? So in our language, Nebo is our wish or desire, and it's called a mountain. It's described as a mountain because it is something that appears difficult to ascend. It seems that it is impossible to realize. It's a mountain, it's tall, it's imposing. It's bigger than we are. It towers over us, this mountain of desire. Nebo is a personification in a word, in this story, of that which we want to be, in contrast to what we are. The next word in this story, so Moses, that which draws out from the plains of Moab, the mother-father state of consciousness, unto the mountain of desire, to the top of Pisgah is the next word here. The word Pisgah, by definition, is to contemplate. Okay? So, to the mountain of desire, Nebo, to the top of contemplation, Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. Okay? What does Jericho mean? Neville says Jericho is a fragrant odor. Okay? Jericho is a fragrant odor. And Gilead, because it says the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead unto Dan. Gilead means the hills of witnesses. And the last word, Dan, is the prophet. Let's put them all together in a practical sense, and let's see what the ancients tried to tell us through this beautiful story, this beautiful personification of a metaphysical state of being the writer of our reality. As I stand here, having discovered that my consciousness is God, and that I can, by simply feeling that I am what I want to be, transform myself into the likeness of that which I am assuming that I am, I know now that I am all it takes to scale this mountain of desire, this Nebo. I define my objective. Step one, know what you want. I don't call it Nebo. I call it my desire. Whatever I want, whatever my desire is, that is my Nebo. That is my great mountain that I am going to scale. I now begin to contemplate it. I begin to contemplate my desire. For I shall climb to the peak of Pisgah, the peak of contemplation. I must contemplate Pisgah, my objective, my Nebo, my mountain, peak of the mountain, right? Must contemplate my objective until I get the feeling of satisfaction that is personified as Jericho, the fragrant odor, right? So I'm drawing out of the mother-father state of consciousness, got this mountain Nebo, my desire, which appears impossible to scale, but in contemplation, I scale it. I'm at the peak of Pisgah, okay? And now I'm next to, according to the story, this fragrant odor of Jericho, okay? Which is, of course, the feeling of satisfaction, right? It's the same story that we've been covering in these Sunday mystery schools, the same idea, same as Esau, Isaac, and Jacob as an example, and there's same as the ring, the bracelets, the staff, right? All these stories we've been covering, it's the same idea personified in a different setting. Okay, so it's the author writing the same story, but personifying it in different characters. So they've told it as people, and now they're telling it as though they're describing a map. Okay, it's a map of consciousness, it's a map that guides us to the treasure of our awareness of being the writer, the authorship, and the state of authorship. So I contemplate my objective until I get the feeling of satisfaction, which is personified as that fragrant odor of Jericho. Then I do nothing to make it visible in my world, okay? I don't have to force this to happen. I am following the recipe for writing my reality, okay? So I don't do anything to make it visible in my world. For the hills of Gilead, which remember is Gilead means witnesses, the men, the women, the children, the whole vast world around me comes bearing the witness of that which I have become at the peak of contemplation, feeling the satisfaction of being that which I desire to be, which is that fragrant odor of Jericho. The hills of Gilead are shown to me, right? Because remember in that verse, it says the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead. So Gilead is the witnesses. The Lord's showing all of the witnesses. This is the reality coming back and reflecting back to you, that state that you have embodied through this process. They come to testify, all of these witnesses, they come to testify that I am what I have assumed myself to be and am sustaining within myself. And when my world conforms to my assumption, the prophecy is fulfilled. If I now know what I want to be, and I assume that I am it, and I walk as though I were it, I become that thing. I become what I desire to be. I now am that. And becoming it, I so completely die to my former concept of self that I cannot point to any place in this world and say, that is where that old self is buried. I so completely died that I defy posterity to ever find where I buried that old self. Okay? Complete transformation of consciousness. Something brand new is what he is really emphasizing here. Okay? So it's like a complete death, a complete transformation, and something brand new is born out of that. And you can't even find where the old remnants were left. Neville says, there must be someone in this room who will so completely transform themselves in this world that their close, immediate circle of friends will not recognize them. I'm going to make that true for us today in Sunday Mystery School. There must be someone participating in Sunday Mystery School right now who will so completely transform themselves in this world that their close, immediate circle of friends will not recognize them after this transformation has occurred. Neville goes on to tell a story about himself and how he has embodied this. He says, for 10 years, I was a dancer. We all know Neville was an actor and a dancer. It's a key part of his origin story. He says, I was a dancer. I was dancing in Broadway shows, in vaudeville, nightclubs, and in Europe. He says, there was a time in my life when I thought I could not live without certain friends in my world. I would spread a table every night after the theater, and we would all dine well together. I thought I could never live without them. I thought I could never live without these friends. Now, after this transformation, Neville says, I confess I could not live with them. We have nothing in common today. When we meet, we do not purposely walk on the opposite side of the street, but it is almost a cold meeting because we have nothing to discuss. I so completely died to that life that as I meet these people now, they cannot even talk of the old times. But there are people living today who are still living in that state, getting poorer and poorer. They always like to talk of the old times. They never buried that man at all. That old man is very much alive within their world. Moses, in this story, was described as being 120 years. A full, wonderful life, full, wonderful age, as 120 indicates. Numerically, if you take 120, 1 plus 2 plus 0 equals 3, which is the numerical symbol of expression. I am fully conscious of my expression. My eyes are undimmed, and the natural functions of my body are not abated. I am fully conscious of being, in this case, what I do not want to be. But knowing this law, by which a man transforms himself, I assume that I am what I want to be, and walk in the assumption that it is done. In becoming it, the old man dies, and all that was related to the former concept of self dies with it. You cannot take any part of the old man into the new man. You cannot put new wine in old bottles. You cannot put new patches on old garments. You must become a new being completely new being. As you assume that you are what you want to be, you do not need the assistance of another to make it so. Neither do you need the assistance of anyone to bury that old man for you. Let the dead bury the dead. Do not even look back. For no man, having put his hand to the plow, and then looking back, is fit for the kingdom of heaven. Do not ask yourself how this thing is going to be. It does not matter if your reason denies it. It does not matter if all the world round about you denies it. You do not have to bury the old. Let the dead bury the dead. You will so bury the past by remaining faithful to your new concept of self that you will defy the whole vast future to find where you buried it. To this day, no man in all of Israel has discovered the sepulcher of Moses. We're talking today about this concept of being the author, of being in the state of authorship. And we're talking about knowing this law by which we can completely transform ourselves. And we're talking about not needing the assistance of another to make it so. We're talking about not needing the assistance of anyone to bury the old man for us. Let the dead bury the dead. Do not even look back, he says, for no man, having put their hand to the plow, and then looking back, is fit for the kingdom of heaven. He says, don't ask yourself how this is going to be. It doesn't matter if you don't see how. It doesn't matter if your reason says, well, this is improbable, this is unlikely, or this is, well, it can't be impossible, right? There's nothing that's impossible, but you can say, oh, it's improbable, it's illogical, it's unlikely, right? Your reason is denying it if you feel that way, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if all the world around about you denies it. Again, this is the truth that sets us free. This is the key that unlocks all doors. Doesn't matter what the odds are. Doesn't matter what the odds are that you will stay locked in the prison of your own limitations. This is the key. Now, let's tie this back to this idea of being the author. Let's imagine that you are literally the author, because we all are, but we're going to conceptualize this very, very literally. Let's imagine there is an aspect of yourself who is one step greater and dimensionally larger, one dimension greater, who is sitting at a desk and writing the story of the life that you, as the character, are living right now. That author, putting pen to paper, is writing the story of this life that you are living, okay? That author, in the state of being the author, writing a story onto blank paper, right? There's all this blank white space in this paper that you're writing into, okay? Does that author care at all what the probabilities are? Does that author have any concern whatsoever for what logic would say is likely to happen next? Is this not the magic of being the author? That white space on the paper that you can write into anything imaginable? Does the author have to justify why the character changed? Does the author have to bury the old character? No. Let the dead bury the dead. You can write brand new, write a complete transformation, write a whole new story with the stroke of a pen. That's the state of being the author. Does the author need other characters in the story that the author is writing to come and aid the character in becoming this transformed version of themselves? No, it is not necessary. Obviously, when you assume that you are, the whole vast world will witness you in that. But you don't need their help in becoming it because you are the author, and with the stroke of a pen, you are that. It does not matter if your reason denies it. It does not matter if you are the author, whether the world that the character is currently living in, per the strokes of your pen, denies that the character is who the character desires to be. You, in the state of the author, the flick of the pen, the flick of the wrist, can imagine a whole new reality for that character to assume. And that's the state of being the author. Neville says, you cannot put new wine in old bottles. Okay, that's a biblical concept there. Okay, so new wine in old wineskins. Okay, now we understand what that was communicating. New patches on old garments. Right? It's discard completely the old man. So when I was really sitting with this in preparation for Sunday Mystery School today, I was thinking about what defines a state of being and how much a state of being is a routine. We are routinely a state of being. Okay, so it's like our routines define our state of being, like literally what we do habitually defines who we are, the state that our character is being in. And then this idea of a complete transformation, which implies that in addition to a new state of consciousness, also our routines would change, right? Could become a completely new person, embodying new routines, embodying, I think the first routine that each of us has is routines of thinking. What are the habitual thoughts that are entertained? What we think over and over again is evidence of the state of consciousness that we are in, the identity that our character is operating as a premise, right? So we, as a character, we're operating from a premise of, oh, this is who I believe I am. When the author rewrites that identity on some level or changes the story, that premise changes, right? So that set of habitual thoughts changes as well. And in the new state, there is a new set of habitual thoughts, right? There's a new set of habits. There's a new set of routines, right? And so this is understanding how to link and how to merge and to draw together the state of operating as a character in this reality field and the state of being the author who is writing the world that the character is experiencing through the character's state of being, right? And you can reconcile or link those two together by understanding the transformation of consciousness that occurs and how, at the end result, the old consciousness dies completely. The new completely takes its place. And with that new state of consciousness is a new awareness, a new set of beliefs about what's possible, because everything that we believe and consent to as being true about ourselves as well as about the world defines our state of consciousness. So to change states implies a complete change in what we believe is true about ourselves, as well as what we believe is true about the world. Okay, and again, this idea of being the author and being able to write that, that's the gift. That's what the ancients were so intent and dedicated to preserving in these stories. This concept of being the author, because as long as we are retaining the pen of the author, we are free. We have the ability to set ourselves free with the simple application of the power. Powerful and compelling message today about being in the state of authorship. That's all I have from the text. At this time, I'm going to invite the mastermind members, anyone who'd like to contribute to that. I know that was, there's a lot that we touched on there in terms of illuminating this state of being the author. And I know that this is the sort of concept that plants seeds. And then over time, those seeds, can begin to have a new awareness about what this really means to be the author. So I'm going to invite now any of my mastermind members who would like to comment or contribute. You are welcome to do so. And we have Orlana. Go ahead, Orlana.
Yes, so this was amazing, by the way. My question is with the transformation, that you are doing. Does it come automatically? You know what I mean? Like when you automatically shift states, does the habits like follow, automatically? Or do you have to like research, the habits that you are going to project if you want to become, what you desire to be?
I love this question. This is great. So I myself have done research on states. Okay, so I look at this somewhat playfully as literally being an author, literally writing a story. So it's like what in the state of being an author, if you're literally writing a story, not just in an inception way, like we're talking about here, but like literally if Orlana, if you were going to write a novel, right? Yeah. And you had a character that you really wanted to bring to life. A key part of bringing that character to life might be state research to understand what would make that character who that character is. So
Exactly.
in terms of research, yeah, I'd say that that's only going to help you get to that place where you are experiencing the satisfaction, which is also that fragrant odor. Okay, so it's
Right.
like, how do I know that I am it? Because I have, drawn it so close. So going back to last week, right? Come close, my son, that I may feel you, that I may feel that state, that I may
Hmm.
give you my blessing, right? So it's like, how do you make it real and where
Right.
you feel it? And so I feel like doing the research as you're suggesting, that can build a reality to it, a reality to the state that will
Right.
allow you to really feel it or really catch that fragrant odor that he's describing in the story.
Okay. Okay. It would it would allow you to feel it faster if
I think so. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I think so. And more tones of reality, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you for that contribution, Orlana. We have
Yes.
Michael. Go ahead, Michael.
There, I had to unmute myself.
Yep.
Oh, I was just struck as you were talking about the transformation of I was struck with the metaphor of a butterfly.
Hmm.
And as I listened, it became more and more perfect. And this idea of burying would be going into the cocoon and then coming out. And speaking to and everything that the exchange you just had is totally valid. But I was also what came up was the kind of automatic nature of that.
Hmm.
How the one creature goes into this thing its body builds, right? And but that could be seen as like you know um going into the closet and disconnecting from your senses, and then how there is a knowledge. Obviously this particular creature doesn't know what it's doing, right? It's just kind of automatic. But there's also a story in its DNA that has been written, so you can go back to the author, so you have a vision of what's going to happen. But how then what happens is once it goes into itself, right, then it totally deconstructs and rearranges itself completely, and then
Hmm.
emerges as something that would not be in a different world, but also that it's not recognizable at all as what it was previously. And
Yeah.
then the final thing was the how that I started thinking like, what is the actual experience of a caterpillar versus a butterfly, and how like you're like down in the dirt, and under plants, and in like you're battling other predators and competition, and then you come out of this cocoon and it's just you're flying and your world is full of flowers that just draw you with their fragrance, and then you go from one to the other. Everything's
Yes.
just smooth and easy, and I was like, wow, that I love that. So I
Yes.
just wanted to contribute that because that came really vividly as you were speaking about, burying the old man and all that.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate that contribution. I love the analogy of the or the metaphor of metamorphosis that is encapsulated in that idea of the butterfly, the caterpillar, the cocoon, the butterfly. So just as you were speaking, I was thinking, I was like, that butterfly is in manner of speaking defying posterity defined where the caterpillar was buried because the caterpillar was completely consumed in this process. It's like completely torn down into the soup, right? And then something completely new comes out of that. And like you said, it's a different dimension, literally a different dimension of experience. You're crawling versus flying. What a complete change of experience from the perspective of the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. So it's beautiful. Thank you for that, Michael. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Jamie.
Just,
Oh, go
just,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. Just to interject to that though,
Yeah.
what the butterfly did though was it happened naturally.
Hmm.
So, like, as far as like doing research, do you necessarily have to do research then? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
can you explain? Like, can you like?
Yeah. Okay. So
You
so
know what I mean?
yeah. So is it necessary? No, it's not necessary. But this is the analogy that I'm going to give. So when I'm
Yeah.
traveling to a new city, uh,
Okay.
I like to take a look and see what is available for me there,
O-
right? And
Okay.
when I do a little bit of research and I understand a little bit of what is available, it's not quite the exact same thing as being there, but it's giving me an idea about the destination. And then I go there and it's actually cubic for me, and then I'm really experiencing it, for myself. So getting
God.
back to this idea of research, it's like if I am contemplating, what the feeling would be like
Mm-hmm.
if I were a specific state, okay? Maybe it would help me make it real to go and take a look at some other examples of what that state might feel like, okay?
Right.
Not
Okay.
necessarily, no, I think you're right. I think there is a part of it that can just happen very naturally. But if it
Yeah.
helps you, like, because you get to a new city and you have the world's your oyster. You have unlimited possibilities of what you could experience, right? But if you
Like,
want to zone in a little bit more, get a little bit more precise about choosing a specific thing,
mhm.
it may be helpful. But I also wanted to mention along the same lines, like you're making a great point about like research, no research. When we do this successfully, this process of going into the reality creator state and assuming a new state, we talk about how our awareness travels there and we
Mhm.
become that. Okay. And so, travel has occurred. I kept saying that over the previous live streams. Travel has occurred when we do it correctly. So then when we come back, we know that something has materially changed because we saw that end. Okay.
Right.
So the
Right.
research might be a GPS, but the research does not take the place of actually being in that end.
Got
Right?
it.
It can help
Got
us
it.
find, the trajectory, but to actually get there and be there, that's what gives this state life. And that, to your point, is a perfectly
Mhm.
natural way of it occurring.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining.
Of course. Thank you, Orlana. Go ahead, Jamie.
Josiah, I just wanted to say that was another power packed session. It always, stuns me how every time I come to these, not only the Zoom calls that are for the members, but also the live stream here, how it seems to answer a question that I have, you know. Um, so there's a lot of value, if anyone there is thinking about joining the membership group, do. Um, and for me today, it was just a permission slip that, what, I could just flip the page and just be someone new. I don't have to wait to resolve all the, the hurt or the upset or the emotion of the past. I
Yes.
don't have to stay faithful to an old identity, the old man.
Mhm.
And I love that, like, let the dead bury the dead was,
Yes.
it was like Neville was, and you were speaking to me.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. I love the interaction on these calls, and all the contributions that all the other members make. It's little nuggets of wisdom that I take with me. So I just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that contribution, Jamie. I love that. That's beautiful. And to emphasize the point that you made there, that really is the magic in this phrase, let the dead bury the dead. In the state of author, like you said, we do have the agency to just be able to turn the page and with a flick of the wrist, new state of consciousness. Again, that's the key. That's the truth that sets us free. That's how we can never be imprisoned. Can we go back and make peace with the past? Well, that's a choice, right? But remember, that's what our creative power is a choice, and you always have the choice to simply start anew. And I think that's a beautiful, you really surfaced that for us in such a beautiful way. So thank you for that. We have Ariel. You unmute yourself and you may go ahead.
Hi, Josiah.
Hello.
Ariel Helena here. Thank you so much. This was amazing. The essence of the message reminded me of from Abraham, wake up and tell a new story.
Mm-hmm.
And just to really appreciate that reminder. I did have a question. I've noticed for myself that like when I'm kind of transitioning to the new being, there's some people who are able to, in my environment, who are able to like resonate and just witness and hold space for the new being without necessarily being told. They're just like, attuned in that way.
Yeah.
And but I've noticed that sometimes there can be this like transition period where still talking, like you still have to talk, interact with humans,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
some humans kind of like, or aliens are like associated with like the old being.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you have any like tools or examples or just your own experience that you had in that transition period. And also with people who you maybe want to keep in your life, even though they may still resonate with some elements of the old being. Yeah.
You're bringing up a great point there. Thank you for that, Ariel. Yeah. So what comes to mind, what I'm present to when you say that is this idea of remaining faithful to the new. So you talked about kind of this transition period. So yes, there is, with the flick of the wrist and the pen of the writer, right? There's the opportunity to write this new state of consciousness, and then we're in that state where get the fragrant odor of Jericho, meaning that we've touched it, right? We know that travel has occurred. We've experienced this in our awareness, and now we're turning to see the hills of witnesses. Okay, so this is now the world coming back to reflect back to us that which we are. So while we're in that period of turning to view or be shown the hills of witnesses, the key is to remain faithful to the state. And this can be a fun and playful thing, right? So it's like you come back from one of these meditations, that something has changed, and then it's almost like when someone has a secret. And like they like know something that you don't know, like they know that there's like a party coming, like a surprise or something, and you're just kind of like, it's like you have like this little secret, like that travel has occurred, that you're a different person than who you were yesterday, and then it's almost it can be fun in a playful way to see how these other reflections in your world embodied in other beings relate to this new part of yourself, and then understand that like in the process of relating, your whole idea is to remain faithful to that change that has occurred, right? So you can interact with these other people, but remember the word of caution that Neville says is he says, once you've put your hand to the plow, right, do not look back, because if you look back, you're not fit for the kingdom of heaven, which is in this case the inheritance of the witnesses, right? There's another story, and I didn't want to mention it earlier because it's kind of reading ahead, but it's fine. There's this other story about Lot and his wife, right? And they're leaving the old city and they're moving towards the new city. And what does Lot's wife do? She turns and looks back at the old city. And what happens? She's turned into a pillar of salt. And what is salt? Salt is a preservative, right? So she turns back and looks at the old state, the dead man, and then preserves that old state because of directing her attention towards it. So putting the hand to the plow, leaving the city, focus on the new objective. A lot of it comes down to where is our attention placed? Are we focused on the new state and remaining faithful to it? Or in some way, are we preserving the old by allowing our attention to drift? This is where we're talking about this idea of literally our habits and patterns of thoughts. So to make this very practical, Ariel, I think the way to kind of ground this is to say, okay, there's still people in my reality that are the same people from who I was before, okay? But the key is what are the habitual thought patterns that I allow myself to think while I'm interacting with them? Am I slipping back into the old and thus preserving the old state by falling into old patterns in the way they interact with them? Or am I keeping my attention focused on the new being that is emerging while I'm interacting in these relationships? So I hope that illustrates it or illuminates it in some way.
Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Okay. Anyone else from the Zoom mastermind chat? Okay. Brilliant. Okay, so that's going to do it for Sunday Mystery School today. Again, I'm very present to this idea that seeds were planted this morning. There's this, again, we come back to the language, right? There's this language that clothes through words these ideas and gives us a slightly different context with which to relate with them. And anytime something is illuminated in a new concept or from a new perspective, it takes on a little different dimension. So my encouragement to each one of you that joins Sunday Mystery School is to consider this new perspective, allow those seeds to be planted, and then see what begins to grow and develop and gestate in your awareness as a result of planting these seeds very deeply into your awareness. I do have a chat from a Zoom member here saying, I am recommending the song Jericho by the artist Iniko. That's Iniko. And Ariel says it is super energizing. Well, as we now know, Jericho is a fragrant odor of the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So a super energizing song about that. Sign me up. That sounds wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay. To everyone who has joined me, thank you so much. We will be back next week, continuing with this lesson. Neville has some more things to talk about on this. He's going to kind of start to wrap up lesson 1, and then we're going to move in to lesson 2. Be back on Tuesday night for another Neville and Chill. I have a guest with me on for that. And we're going to be sharing success stories of manifestations. So that should be a very good time. So definitely join us for that. We do have someone on YouTube saying, if you want to bring someone into your new world, create a version of them that aligns with the new you. That is crystal clear, sharing that with us. And Crystal is saying that we as the author have the opportunity to also write new versions of those around us. That's what we do when we imagine lovingly on behalf of another. We're writing a new version of them, and then we are holding that vision that they will be that. We are believing in them, which is also believing in ourselves, our royal selves, in the larger, dimensionally greater sense. So I trust this episode has been a blessing for all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, my friends, imagine wisely. And I will see you all again very soon.